Living in a city means riding packed metros, jammed with people like a can of sardines. It's always loud and noisy. Sometimes it gets hard to breathe, especially during rush hours. In this part of town, metros are the lifeblood of the city, constantly pulsing with people from all walks of life. But with it comes a certain level of chaos and discomfort, especially during peak hours. I've had my share of unpleasant metro rides, but one day, right in the middle of such chaos, I faced something scary that I will remember for a long time. That day, I was with my boyfriend. The metro was more crowded than usual. It was just like any other day, but we made the choice to stand in the mixed compartment instead of the ladies' section. I felt safe with him, and we found a small space in the sea of people. I'm not very tall, just about 5 feet. I laid my head on his chest, leaning on him for support as the metro lurched along its tracks. The noise was deafening, a mix of chatters, laughs, and the hum of the moving train. The air was thick with different scents, creating a cocktail of city life. Suddenly, I felt an odd sensation. Something brushed against my butt. It was a crowded metro, and such things were bound to happen. But the brushing didn't stop. Instead, it grew bolder and more frequent. Soon, a disturbing realization dawned on me. The touch was not accidental. There was a man pressing himself against me. I could feel his private part pushing against my butt. The realization terrified me. I tried to wriggle out of the tight spot, but the crowd was too thick. Panic started to set in. I attempted to tell my boyfriend, but my words drowned in the chaos surrounding us. Soon, the gentle brushing turned into a forceful rubbing. I was sure now, horrified at what was happening to me. It was as if my body was paralyzed, not reacting to my desperate commands to push away or move. My mind was screaming, but my voice was lost in the deafening noise of the metro. I felt like I was stuck in a twisted nightmare. Each second felt like an eternity. I counted the stops, each one bringing me closer to my escape. As soon as the metro pulled into the next station, I broke away from my immobilization and dashed out of the metro as the doors opened. The events that followed are a blur. I remember rushing through the platform, gasping for breath, the noise of the station slowly fading behind me. I don't remember if I told my boyfriend what had happened or if I had broken down crying in the middle of the street. That day still haunts me. It's a chilling reminder of how, despite being surrounded by people, one can still feel utterly alone and vulnerable. I learned a harsh truth that day. Public spaces can harbor unseen dangers, and fear can strike when you least expect it. I share this story not to scare others, but to raise awareness. It's crucial to stay alert, to trust your instincts, and most importantly, to not be afraid to raise your voice when you feel threatened or uncomfortable. The Central Line is always notoriously busy, so I thought nothing of being sardined up against people in a rush hour commute. I was on my way to a really important work meeting early in the morning, so I had my headphones in, zoned out of the chaos. In the sea of pressed bodies, I felt an alien hand creeping up between my thighs. At first, I thought it was accidental, someone stuck in the crowded train, an unwelcome side effect of the morning rush. But then I felt the cold, intrusive fingers crawling further up my leg. I turned off my music, the silence in my ears filled with the heavy, ominous breaths of a stranger behind me. I froze. My mind raced, thinking surely he wouldn't dare to push further. But as if in a horrific dream, his hand moved further up my inner thigh, an unwelcome guest in a place no one but me should have access to. His hand had the audacity to trespass between my legs, violating my personal space in the most intrusive way. I whipped my head around, my eyes burning with disbelief and fear. "Are you out of your mind?" I spat at him, venom in every word. His hand snapped back as though burnt, a wolf retreating from a flame. For the remaining few stations, I stood in silence, the disturbing event echoing in my mind. As I stepped off the train, I kept my eyes on him, etching every detail of his appearance into my memory. Rage surged through me like wildfire. Outside the station, I feverishly typed out a text to my boyfriend, recounting the incident while it was fresh, as if documenting it would somehow solidify it and prove its reality against my denial. As I read and reread the message, the incident's reality cemented. My initial doubts were wiped away, replaced by the cold, hard truth I had been violated. I sent a message to 61016, detailing the incident, the time, and the description of the man. Within 24 hours, an officer had contacted me. He was supportive, validating my experience, and making me feel heard. They found the man using the CCTV footage. This wasn't his first offense. Knowing my report had helped catch this predator, potentially saving other victims, made me feel a bit better. But the incident left a scar, deep fear, and wariness in my heart. I urge everyone, if you experience something unsettling, to report it. Even if it feels insignificant, even if time has passed. Because if something makes you uncomfortable, it is probably harassment, and you shouldn't remain silent. It was another routine evening on the packed, rush-hour tube, midweek. The clamor of the crowded carriage and the rhythmic rumble of the train melded into the ambient soundtrack of my life. Lost in my thoughts, I felt the sudden vibration of my phone nestled in my pocket. The familiar ping echoed in my ears, signaling an incoming airdrop request. Habitually, without a second thought, I retrieved my phone and accepted the request. My heart was drumming an anticipatory beat. Maybe it was a funny meme from a bored traveler looking to lighten the atmosphere. What met my eyes when I opened the image was an unnerving sight, one that sent a wave of discomfort and horror washing over me. It was a vulgar and lewd image, far from the humor I had expected. A disturbing and perverted display of his fully erect self filled my screen. The image was so grotesque, it was like a punch to my gut. My breath hitched, my heart pounded, and a cold chill swept over me. With great effort, I forced myself to remain composed. Knowing that the person who sent it must be close to me, I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Swallowing the surge of revulsion that welled up within me, I slid my phone back into my pocket, my skin crawling at the thought that somewhere in the near vicinity, the person responsible for this violation was watching me. Who could it be? I looked around, scanning the sea of strangers. But they all looked like ordinary people, commuters making their way home after a long day at work. They looked nothing like the perverse individual I was looking for. As I considered the disturbing situation I found myself in, a chilling thought struck me. How many other women had been targeted this way? I was struck by a dreadful realization. The person who did this wasn't simply looking for an innocent prank. They had meticulously planned this disturbing act. They had browsed their gallery, selected the most grotesque image, and patiently waited for an unsuspecting victim. Their intentions were clear and purposeful. Despite the shock, part of me was intrigued. There was a perverse creativity to their approach, exploiting the anonymity provided by a crowded train and technology. It was a twisted, horrifying game for them, and I was the unsuspecting pawn. What I hadn't grasped then, but know now, is that this form of cyberflashing is a form of sexual harassment. It's a violation, an intrusion into one's personal space. It's a crime that should be reported to the authorities. Looking back, I wish I had known better. I wish I had reported the incident to the police and trusted in their ability to track down this predator. I now understand the importance of reporting these incidents, not just for me, but for every woman who might encounter this person in the future. Now I know. Now I'm prepared. If something like this were to happen again, I wouldn't hesitate to report it. I want to encourage others to do the same. If something makes you feel uncomfortable, speak up. Your voice can make a difference. Let's not allow these predators to hide behind the veil of technology. Let's shed light on their dark deeds and hold them accountable for their actions. As a young girl, when I was just 10 years old, I fondly looked forward to summer camp. The onset of the sunny season marked not just the end of the school year, but the beginning of adventure. That summer, the excitement was slightly tainted by the fact that I had to travel by bus, a crowded one at that. It was an exhausting journey through the scorching heat of India, and I was in the company of my grandfather. I wore a simple, light-colored skirt and a t-shirt, which was a sensible choice considering the unforgiving weather. The bus was bustling with passengers and there was barely any room to sit, which meant I had to stand, sandwiched between strangers. Navigating through the sea of people, I found a small vacant space close to my grandfather, amidst the men's section. I held onto the overhead support, stretching my arms up, which incidentally hitched my skirt up a little on the side. It was barely noticeable, revealing just a small part of my hip, a detail I'd later scrutinize in the washroom. Out of nowhere, I felt a strange, cold touch on my exposed skin. Startled, I immediately tugged my skirt down, attributing the feeling to an errant breeze, a highly unlikely event in the middle of an Indian summer, but the only innocuous explanation my young mind could muster. I readjusted my stance, trying to ignore the uncomfortable incident. After a while, the brakes were suddenly applied and there was a jerk experienced on the bus, causing all the passengers to lurch forward. Instinctively, my hands flew up for support, my skirt lifting slightly again. I was too preoccupied with maintaining my balance to notice the accidental exposure. The chilling touch reappeared on my hip. This time, curiosity took the best of me and I looked down, only to see an old man's hand lingering on my skin. He was roughly the same age as my grandfather. The moment our eyes met, he quickly withdrew his hand and pretended nothing had happened. A wave of confusion swept over me. I felt a knot in my stomach, a strange sense of discomfort and violation that my young mind couldn't quite comprehend. Even though I was brought up to be reserved, a child who only spoke when spoken to and seldom made any fuss, I knew something was wrong. The shock kept me silent, the incident too disorienting and disturbing for me to react appropriately. Years later, when I looked back at this incident, I understood the gravity of the old man's actions, the shameless breach of my personal space, and the vile intent behind that cold touch. It was not just a haunting memory, but a grim lesson that shed light on the darker aspects of society. It instilled in me the necessity to be more vigilant and assertive, a hard-learned lesson that continues to affect my interactions with the world. The memory of that bus ride casts a sinister shadow over my otherwise cheerful summer camp recollections. To all young girls out there, it is essential to realize that your voice matters, and you have every right to stand up against anything that makes you uncomfortable. Always trust your instincts, and never hesitate to seek help when in doubt. The world can be a scary place, but remember, you are strong and can protect yourself.